Hi, it's Dr. Lori here and back with some more what to look for at the thrift store. So your thrift store shopping, there are objects that you're going to see in any thrift store, flea market, that kind of thing. And basically, I want you to know what you should look for, how you can identify these objects. You know, it's funny because people will say to me, hey, Dr. Lori, you know, how'd you get started in all this? And then I talk about my PhD or I talk about, you know, my background in museums or that kind of thing. But actually, I got started this as a little kid. And I grew up in New England, and my mom used to oftentimes go to what would be called today outlet stores, you know, to save money. And basically what I would be given the job, because I was the youngest kid, to look at the objects, look at the sweaters that were on kind of like, you know, the $3 table and see if there were any pulls or any tears or any holes or something. And this was kind of where you kind of get your start. When I taught at Penn State, I used to tell my students, you know what, you are who you are when you're 8. So figure out what you like and figure out what you're good at and do that. There's no harm in doing that. So anyway, but that's how I really got started. So like Filene's basement with a big, you know, tables full of stuff that were seconds. I had to see how bad the seconds were. But anyway, I tell you that because I want you to start to educate your eyeballs. I want you to start to kind of like really use your gut. So your gut will help you. As opposed to all these people who think they know, I want you to be empowered so you know. That's what I really want. So that's what these videos are about. These videos are about you're at the thrift store, you've got these regular objects that you could find, that you could see, what's cool, what could be resold, what can actually make you some cash. Okay, let's get started. This is an Apple tea caddy. Now, you're thinking, well, gosh, Dr. Lori, I don't see a lot of those. But actually, it's interesting to note that this piece, which dates all the way back to the early part of the 1800s, is a relatively common kitchen item of that time. Notice it has a lock on it. Hardware, locks, keys, those types of elements, like accessory elements on an object, can really tell you a lot about date and time and where that piece has lived for a long time. So look for a deterioration, look for a deterioration around the edges, look for, in fact, also any kind of oxidation, right? If the metal starts to turn different colors in different areas, and also look for, in fact, the size, shape, and material of a lock or a key or a hinge or another piece of hardware on a piece. This Apple tea caddy is pretty valuable. It's quite old, and of course, it's in good condition. They're hand carved. They're used for securing tea. Now, you know, as I said, growing up in New England, tea was the thing. You know, your afternoon drink would be tea. And basically, tea was extremely expensive, like spices, so it would be in the kitchen, but it would be under lock and key. So that piece worth about $2,500 if you were to discover one in a thrift store, flea market, or such. So that's a really good find. The next object is Bakelite. Now you've all heard about Bakelite. I know you've heard about Bakelite kind of ad nauseum, right? Oh, I don't know how to test Bakelite. I have to get acid. I have to get a Q-tip. No, you don't have to do any of these things to test Bakelite. I like the very simple run it under hot water test for Bakelite. And you're saying, well, what's that, Dr. Lori? These particular bracelets are not Bakelite, okay? They're regular plastic. If they were Bakelite, you could take these bracelets or bracelets that you think might be Bakelite, run them under hot water, which will not hurt them. And this is important about these stupid tests. These tests that tell you to put acid on something, you're going to damage the thing before you realize what the results of the tests are. So take it under hot water, run the hot water over the object. It won't hurt the water. Make sure the water is relatively hot and give a sniff. Sniff it, right? So sniff the piece and see if you smell formaldehyde. Do you remember chemistry in 11th grade? You know, formaldehyde, that smell. If you have that smell, you have a synthetic or Bakelite bracelet. So that's one of the easy tips, easy tests that won't hurt your objects. All those other stupid tests, you're going to hurt your object, devalue it, and then you're done. Okay, so there's that. The Bakelite piece that you see here, this yellow Bakelite that we know is Bakelite bracelet with the carved indentations, actually the carved design, is worth $200. So you could get that at the thrift store. You could purchase it, and you could purchase it usually within a big bag of costume jewelry, if you will, and you can actually flip it online for a lot more. So Bakelite was very trendy about 5 years ago. You're seeing it wane in the market now, but again, it will always come right back. And the brighter the color, the more intricate the designs, the more valuable. So look for those when you're in that thrift store shopping. Disneyland. This is the Disneyland scarf, and it has, of course, Tinkerbell in the middle. It does depend with these particular collectible Disney scarves. Now, I don't have to tell you guys who are shopping all the time, there's lots of Disney stuff out there. There's lots of new Disney stuff out there, right, from the early 2000s, and there's lots of old Disney stuff out there. So this particular scarf is an older Disney scarf, and it dates to the late 1950s, maybe 5 years after Disneyland is actually unveiled in Anaheim, California. Disney World as well would sell these particular scarves. Now, the Tinkerbell in the center is important, so it depends on which Disney character is in the center. I have told you many times that my favorite Disney princess is Snow White, the brunette, and in fact, others are very popular. So whoever's in the middle is going to be important for value, and that's what's kind of interesting. You know, the value go up and down based on what is featured on the scarf. This particular example, it's made of polyester, it's not made of silk, and value on it for Disney collectibles, about $85, but you could find it in the thrift store and usually negotiate for it within, of course, the accessories area. You could probably get it for as low as $5, as high as $15 for one. In the accessories areas at your thrift stores, you want to make sure that you are looking for those types of things because accessories are usually overlooked, and oftentimes scarves are found in pockets of pants, in pockets of coats, and also, of course, within pocketbooks. Some thrift stores are great. They check everything, they find everything, they look for everything, but others sometimes are a little willy-nilly and they leave things in pockets as well. So, all right, about $85 for that piece retail. All the values I'm giving you, remember, retail values based on a sales record where a similar piece has sold. So when you say, oh, I can't find that on eBay sold listings, think again. I want you to realize that there are lots of places to sell pieces, and there's lots of course, these values all retail based on a sales record that's authenticated. This piece is a Queen Elizabeth II wedding brochure from 1947. Queen Elizabeth II married Prince Philip, of course, in 1947. And in fact, interestingly enough, this was the wedding brochure. The wedding brochure is not in very good condition. It's quite old, almost 70 years old. And in fact, this particular brochure is not in great condition, but it is in fact a really nice collectible. You can see the interior with the photographs of the couple. You can also see, of course, Queen Elizabeth's crest on one of the pages, and of course the front cover. It's really a nice keepsake. It will increase in value extremely much more when in fact she passes, and I think she probably will live well over 100, I hope. And of course that's a really nice piece. This piece in this condition, it's worth about $50. The other things that you might find at the thrift store are watches, lots of different types of watches. So this watch is a Swatch watch. It's from 1987, and this particular Swatch watch is one that you might actually find at the thrift store. When you're at the thrift store and you're shopping, and they usually have watches under lock and key, maybe in a glass case, like a display case. So you ask somebody to come over. It's a good idea if they'll let you to look at different watches, try to compare and contrast. So look at more than one at once. And the reason for that is you can sort of think about your budget and how much do I want to spend on this one, how much do I want to spend on that one. To have the comparison sometimes helps. So this particular Swatch watch and why you would be able to identify and how you would know that it's a 1987 or a vintage Swatch watch is in fact the wristband. The wristband is a thicker plastic than today's Swatch watches that you can get today. So you want to look for that thickness of the band. If you have to look at a new one and then compare to an old one, but usually the wristband on a vintage Swatch is in fact a little bit thicker. So, you know, feel it and get that idea in your hand, you know, get that idea in your head. Once you get that idea in your head, you actually will be able to identify it yourself. And that's what I'm trying to get you to do, so you can identify it yourself, so you're empowered to do that. This Swatch watch from 1987 is worth $120 retail. Then there are pieces like this that you do find oftentimes at the thrift store, and these are kind of accessory pieces. These are Boy Scout and Girl Scout cake toppers. So basically they would go, they're not candles, they would go on top of a birthday cake. In the 1960s, you would actually find these particular ones, and you could see different derivations of them throughout the years from the 50s to about the 80s. And basically you could, if you were a scout and you had all of your Girl Scout friends over for your birthday party, you could have, of course, these sitting on your birthday cake among your candles. So they're pretty popular. They're very, very, very cute. They usually come in sets of 12, but again, there are just sporadic ones. We have some that are, of course, Boy Scouts and some that are, of course, Girl Scouts, and value on this group about $30. So you might be able to get them for a couple dollars at the thrift store, and then you might be able to, in fact, again, flip them online for more. Always try, when you are marketing online, always try to find your niche market. So what you're trying to do is you're going to try to find people who are collecting, of course, Boy or Girl Scouts. So keywords are going to be important. And of course, when you are listing things, you want to make sure that you have this information in your title. More on that in another video. Having said that, this next piece you can oftentimes find and are almost always overlooked are decanters. Decanters at thrift stores are oftentimes, of course, among the other glassware, and some glassware is great and some glassware is not, and that's just the way it is. But decanters typically are something that a lot of people will overlook. They go, oh, you know what, I don't entertain that much anymore, so they go off to the donation places. Decanters like this one, of course, with the stopper. The stopper has to be in good condition, okay? So if it's cracked on the bottom or something's wrong, that's problematic. You can still sell it, but of course you want to think about, of course, the value of that and the condition of that. The other thing I want you to think about with, of course, decanters is what it is decanting. So in this case, this would be for, again, a very, very strong and thin or narrow neck, where my hand is around the neck. And that's for something heavy, for a full, of course, bodied wine kind of thing or other spirit. Make sure that this matches. Usually it has a similar decoration top to bottom, right? So the decoration will match. Make sure they don't get changed out. Because when you're in the thrift store, a lot of things get changed out. So you want to be careful that some stopper didn't get placed on top of one item when it really went to another item. Decanters can be very valuable, and a lot of times you can pick them up for a couple of dollars, maybe even 10 bucks at a thrift store. This one that you see here is worth $200. So you want to make sure that you are getting those as well. And then there's this point that a lot of you always ask me about, and it's that issue of style. Is something truly made by a particular brand name maker, or is it just the style of that maker? This is a Tiffany style lamp in the wisteria pattern, made very famous by Louis Comfort Tiffany, but this particular lamp is a reproduction of that lamp. It's a good reproduction, okay? And you go, what's a good reproduction, Dr. Lori? When you're looking at Tiffany lamps or Tiffany style lamps, which were not made by the Tiffany company, but were reproductions, these particular types of lamps, I want you to look at the leading. That's the metal work in between each one of those slag glass panes, right? Look at the leading, look for how thin or thick it is. If it looks muddy and thick and not well executed, it's probably not a Tiffany. Tiffany lamps will also be marked, usually marked underneath the shade, right? So you're going to take the shade off, you're going to look underneath it. Got to be careful while you do that because they're fragile. So be aware of that. If you don't have all the pieces, right? You have the finial, for example, that screws on the top, and that ring on the top that actually connects the finial to that base portion. You have to make sure you have all those pieces. It does impact value. This particular Tiffany style, reproduced in the wisteria pattern manner of Tiffany, is still worth $1,500. That's a nice piece, even though it's not the real thing. If it were the real thing, a real Tiffany lamp of this size from the wisteria pattern could be worth as much as $10,000 or more. And then there's a painting. Lots and lots and lots of you have paintings. The first thing I want to tell you about paintings, look at the frame. Don't forget to look at the frame. The frame can have added value, and added value is important, of course, when you're looking at fine art. Frames are also important because they are actually What are they doing? They're basically making sure that the artwork stays together. We had paintings in my house growing up. They weren't really paintings. They were kind of highlighted prints that looked textural. So let's not be fooled by those. We didn't come from particular wealth, so we didn't have all these great works of art around us. But basically what the frame would do is it would protect even the inexpensive oleographs or highlighted textural prints on canvas or even canvases. So look at the frame and make sure that if you have paintings that you have frames on them. They protect the canvas themselves. This particular one, and it's obviously from the 40s. So then you go, well, Dr. Lori, I don't know it's obviously from the 40s. What's obvious about it? Well, if you look at this composition, you can see the geometric lines that were very popular in the 1940s in landscape paintings. You can also see that the trees look as if they are done in sort of an impressionistic manner, right? Really kind of fluffy, attention to detail when they're painting the tops of the trees. That's a typical representational image of course, a 1940s painting. So it's really pretty typical. So art historians like me look at that particular composition or the way the painting is set up, right? For your eye to address that painting, and I go, oh, that's the 1940s. So it's kind of wartime, World War II, and post-war American, 1941 to about 1949 or so. That's a nice piece, and this one is worth about $350. Other things you might find are cups and saucers. So many of you are out there going, I can't sell a cup and a saucer, Dr. Lori. I can't sell it if it's not Wedgwood or Royal Dalton or, one of those, Ainsley or that kind of thing. So I want you to look at these particular pieces and see how you can thematically market them. What does that mean? Well, I want you to see how you can put it into a theme. This particular cup and saucer is Transferware, and it is in fact a good example of Transferware. So basically what you have is of course, the way in which this cup actually has an image, a picture, transferred onto it, right? So it's transferred onto this piece of ceramic for the decoration. Now, that's a good example of Transferware. Cups and saucers can be very inexpensive to buy at the thrift store, and then they can be flipped.